Hi, everyone. I'm so thrilled to have you here today. Before we dive in, I want to introduce someone incredibly special to me, my dear friend, Molly Carroll. Molly isn't just an amazing coach and therapist. She's the person I call at any hour when I'm staring at a blank page or facing down self-doubt. And somehow she always knows exactly what to say. You all are in for a session with a capital S today. We've covered so much ground, from the transformative power of morning rituals to reframing our resistance through a completely new lens. Molly shared incredible insights about self-care through the creative process, and honestly, so much more than I could have hoped for. With over 30 years of experience in education and mental health, Molly brings a wealth of wisdom as a seasoned therapist, coach, and public speaker. She's dedicated her life to helping people lead more empowered and connective lives, something every writer needs. You might recognize Molly from her two powerful TED Talks or know her as the author of Cracking Open, a creative journal for self-transformation, and Trust Within, Letting Intuition Lead. Both books have helped countless writers break through their barriers. If her voice sounds familiar, you might be one of her many fans of her heartwarming podcast, Cracking Open with Molly Carroll, which has become a global resource for anyone seeking connection, healing, and inspiration. When she's not transforming people's lives, Molly leads incredible workshops and retreats across the United States, Mexico, and Costa Rica. She's even shared her wisdom with companies like Apple, LinkedIn, and Hydro Flask. What I find most inspiring about Molly is how her spiritual journey, including a private audience with His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, has shaped her approach to helping others connect with their higher selves and create with purpose and compassion. So get comfortable, maybe grab something to write with, because I promise you're going to want to remember what she has to say. Welcome to The Whole Writer, a place where we talk about what it means to show up as a writer. Not just a better writer or a more productive writer or a published writer, but a whole one. Someone who's grounded in their voice, in their community, in their creative path, even when the world tells them to hustle, compare, or conform. I'm Nicole Meier, a multi-published author and book coach who believes that nurturing the person behind the page is just as important as refining the words on it. Each week, we'll explore the terrain of writing life with honesty, warmth, and practical wisdom, creating space for you to write from a place of wholeness rather than depletion. Whether you're drafting your first manuscript or publishing your fifth book, you'll find conversation and companionship for the journey here. So, settle in, bring your questions and your curiosity, and let's discover what it means to write and live with authenticity and purpose. Hello, writers. Welcome back into The Whole Writer. I am thrilled about today's guest because not only is she an amazing human, but she is one of my dear longtime friends. Molly is a credentialed teacher, licensed therapist, coach, author, parent, and friend. But most of all, she's one of the most intuitive people that I know. So that's why I wanted her to come on and discuss the topic of what's really holding writers back. So welcome, Molly.
Thank you for having me. I love that I'm your most intuitive friend.
Molly and I have known each other for a very long time, and we have supported each other as writer friends and as personal friends. And we have a small sort of solopreneur group that we're a part of. And I've been itching to get you on the podcast, Molly, and this just feels like the right time, especially right now, because I'm focusing on a lot of sort of the whole writer in terms of wellness and caring for ourselves and really going deeper than just the craft. So I am thrilled to talk about this discussion with you.
Well, I'm honored to be here. I love writers. I'm a writer, and I love talking about the whole self as well. But the perfect topic for the two of us.
And we will definitely share about your books at the end of this because I want to make sure that we share that with our audience. Okay, so Molly, you are a therapist. And you are a coach, and I know that you deal with this with so many people when they talk about the resistance and feeling stuck and what's holding them back. But today, we're really going to talk about writers, and I know you can tap into this because you're an author yourself. But I think I want to start at the beginning because we always like to say, oh, what are the tactics? Or, what can I do? I want to just start very simple. I usually say the most simple thing is usually the most powerful. So let's talk about morning rituals. This is something I learned from you. Many writers lean into the idea of morning rituals. So could you kind of talk about therapeutic insights you can offer and why establishing something so simple could be so powerful and what would be beneficial of this kind of a practice?
I'm going to try to focus everything I say today to writers, but I think it's to anyone. I think anyone could listen to this podcast and get something out of it, but we'll focus on the writer's journey. But I've been a licensed therapist for over 25 years, but I've been working with families, children, women for over 30 years. And I would say the number one tool that is supportive of anyone's creative endeavor is the morning ritual. And why that is because we usually wake up with a strong sense of purpose in the way, what I mean of like, that could be like your to-do list for your kids. That could be something you need to do that you didn't get done the day before. Our brains are, even though we're tired, they wake up because they've been in a subconscious place. So how you start your morning is really important, not only from a psychological place, from a neuropsychology place, from a spiritual place. And the other thing I want to share that I think is really important for everyone listening to is we have all these books and we have all these top 5 tips and we have all these things we're going to hear. But in order to really have a productive morning ritual, you have to know yourself. Who are you? Are you realistically not going to be able to do anything until you have a cup of coffee? The first thing you do as your morning ritual is make yourself a cup of coffee. You can make that kind of ritualistic, or a cup of tea or hot water with lemon, anything like that. That's really important. And then are you more of a journaler? I'm guessing a lot of your writers, your listeners are journalers. Are you someone that does it voice memo? Are you someone that does it on the computer? Are you someone that's pen and paper? Journaling is great. Are you someone who wants to just kind of get quiet? Meditation, prayer, intention setting, goal setting. Learn to know what is yourself and what works for you. And I'm kind of opposite. Like, I actually need to get up and write my to-do list first, and then I can kind of quiet. I need to get it out of my head, what needs to happen. So no shame in that. Is it exercise? Is it getting out in nature? Is it opening a window? Is it lighting a candle? But do something for you. Because I think if you set up your morning ritual knowing that it's important to have something that's about your process, your soul, your day, you're going to be able to be available not only for the muse of the writer, but for everyone else in your life. So yeah, I would say morning rituals are very, very important.
I love that you mentioned the to-do list, because I will say I come across some resistance with writers where they say, I don't want to be so self-indulgent and sit down and have my tea and journal. And my family's thinking, what are you doing? What's going on? And when you brought in the to-do list, it made it much more practical, but also still grounding yourself, grounding in how you start your day. And I think that that is so often overlooked. So I'm really happy that you touched on different ways people can begin their day. Because if you just fly right into, okay, I'm going to sit at the keyboard and start typing, we all know it's not as deep of a process and you're not going to get as much out of the work for that day. So I love that. For someone who's never meditated or just sat down and journaled before the lights even come on, if they light a candle, what would you say is a very small, easy step for them, even internally, to tell themselves, it's okay, this is not self-indulgent?
That's a big one. I mean, we could spend a whole hour just on that, and it's around worthiness. And we as a culture, especially as women, have not been programmed that we are worthy to take time for ourselves. We've been taught it's selfish. We've been taught it's self-indulgence. So that's a rewiring that is up to you. And this is where I'm going to drop into self-agency, and that you are responsible for your own feelings. And I think often women want permission, and men too. But what I've seen more in my work is that it's harder for women than men to have permission to take care of themselves. So I have a lot of compassion around this because I have it too. I have a really hard time taking care of myself. I offer retreats for women. I offer coaching programs for women, yet I don't attend one. I don't attend many retreats. I've never done a coaching program for myself, but I've learned other things that I do to take care of myself. So the first thing I would say is, with compassion and a lot of love, but you are responsible for your own feelings. So if you're not feeling like yourself and you can be self-indulgent, that's your responsibility to change that messaging. So that could be anything from like a morning mantra before you even get out of bed, put one hand on your heart, one hand on your belly. It's really important to touch the skin to remind the body from a somatic place that you are worthy. And you may see yourself as an 8-year-old at that moment. And like, oh, but mom says I got to get up and get my shoes and get ready to school. Or an 18-year-old, I got to rush to class. Or a 30-year-old, oh my gosh, the kids first and my husband first. Or you're caretaking someone, but you just take 10 seconds to say, you are worthy. All is okay. I can take a moment for myself. I deserve this, whatever comes out to you, or I'm responsible for my own emotions. So in order for me to be available for everyone else, I need to take care of myself first. And I'm going to say it's not easy, but being healthy and whole is not easy.
Nah.
It's not like it just arrives. And as we get older, more complications come into play. And so it needs to be more of a priority. So the first thing I would say is you are responsible for your own feelings and your own emotions. So you need to take care of yourself. And the second thing is called intimacy and interdependence. So in order to know that you're worthy, intimacy, meaning you have to be vulnerable, you have to be open-hearted, you have to try. You don't have to, you have to try. I know it's not easy. And the interdependence place is find your community.
Yeah.
So as Nicole mentioned, we're in the solopreneur. I call it a women's business meeting. We've been meeting for 4 years, and we have created a culture of intimacy and interdependence. And through that culture, we now feel more worthy about who we are, what we do in the world, how we are as mothers, sisters, humans, because we are taking responsibility for our own emotions. And we believe in intimacy, being vulnerable, being honest, being truthful, using our voice, and interdependence, finding the right community, the safe space of trust to talk about what we're going through in order to feel more worthy that we deserve to take time for ourselves.
I'm so happy that you brought all that up, Molly, because 2 words are standing out to me: vulnerability and community. And it's very ironic because as writers, we know this. We say in order to have your readers connect to your story, you have to show vulnerability with characters on the page. And in order to learn craft and learn about where your publishing path is and where you're going as a writer, you need to connect with a creative community. And as authors, we say, okay, and it's almost like we compartmentalize that. We say, I'm going to be vulnerable on the page, but I'm not going to be vulnerable in real life. I'm going to show up for creative community because I want my work to get out into the world, but I'm not going to necessarily think that I deserve to always be in community. And so it's this very strange push and pull of, I know I need it over here in the work, but can I do it for myself? So I'm so happy you brought that up.
Yeah. And I mean, I think any reader knows I'm a huge reader, especially for my podcast. I read a book a week with interviewing people, is that the more vulnerable, the more interesting, and readers are smart. They know if you're not living, walking the walk, living your practices, they can feel it on the page. And so I would just say that you do it for yourself first. And because of that mission of self-care and knowing the importance of knowing you're worthy, your work will show that as well on the page, in your conferences, speaking engagements, interviews, and when you meet in your community. They're all in the same vein. They're not separate. If you separate them, they'll feel separate. If you put them together in the collective, they'll feel more connected.
I totally agree. And that's exactly why I'm trying to focus on the whole writer, because it's not just about the creation, it's about the person creating it. And it's all tied together. And I think that as creatives, we really need to step back and really look at everything together as opposed to compartmentalizing the process. So yeah, I agree with that. Okay, this actually gives me a lovely segue because I want to talk about resistance of showing up to the work. We talked about what can we do for ourselves to start our day, to ground ourselves. We talked about how can we be vulnerable? How can we think about community? But at the end of the day, for so many writers, myself included at times, there is this resistance that keeps coming up. So I want to hear from your point of view, Molly, about resistance and what that really means or how we can look at it differently as writers.
If you are having resistance, it's the same way. Let's imagine you're in a car and you hit a roadblock. Are you just going to sit there and not do anything. The car can't go through the barrier. You can wait as long as you want, but the barrier's not going to move. Again, I come back to self-agency. You need to move your car around. You need to use different skills and tools to figure out how to overcome the resistance. The resistance is not just going to move. There's a great saying that courage does not just arrive. It arrives from action. We become more courageous through our actions, and resistance is the same way. So I'm going to start by talking about our nervous system. And people may know this, but just like kind of a 101 of nervous system. We have an autonomic nervous system that involves two parts: the sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight or flight, and your parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and digest. Now, the thing is that we need our sympathetic nervous system. We need it for fight and flight. You've heard mothers lifting cars off their children, or we needed it when we needed to fight a saber-toothed tiger. But now it's happening when we get an email that doesn't work, or we wake up with resistance in the morning. Your palms start to sweat, your stomach churns, your eyes dilate, and you can see a very minimal view, and you're unable to fight the resistance when you're in the sympathetic nervous system, and it stays in your body for 90 to 120 minutes. Unless, like a light switch, you turn on your parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and your digest. You have a broader view, you become more hungry, your heart opens more, you're more creative, you have better ideas and resolving. So if you're feeling resistance, I would have you learn about yourself. What are your parasympathetic tools? Breathing, breath work, 3 deep breaths, journaling, dancing, getting out in nature, cleaning a closet. I mean, you could get in the right and left brain, but I won't go there too much. But because the right brain is you're flooding in the right brain, too many emotions, all the voices, I'm horrible. This is what happened to me yesterday. That's right brain. You're flooding in your right brain. Then you'd be like, clean out one drawer. And while you're cleaning out the drawer, maybe listen to a podcast that someone inspires you, or a book that inspires you while you're cleaning the drawer. If you're too left brain, like, oh, I got to do this and this and this and this and this, you need to get to the right brain to turn on the parasympathetic nervous system. You dance, sing, paint, get outside in nature. Dan Siegel calls it the river of integration, your right and left brain that turns on your parasympathetic nervous system. When you're in your parasympathetic nervous system, you have more ideas of how to fight resistance. You would hear a voice saying, write one word on the page. And from that word, write one sentence. And from that sentence, write one paragraph. Wow, look at those flowers. How could those be a part of my story? Or what's one story in my life that I tell over and over again because it's interesting? How could I implement that into my book?
I love it. I'm thinking of all the writers and you listeners, if anyone's out there who's in the query trenches or has gotten rejection or has even shared some pages in a critique group and felt like it didn't land right, I want you to really pay attention. I encourage you to pay attention because we all have resistance at different times. And the things Molly is saying, honestly, like to all those people who open up their email and get a rejection from an agent, go for a walk, journal, dance, do something different because I love that idea. We don't give ourselves a chance to rest. We're just like, who else can I query? Who else can I reach out to? How can I keep this train going? And it's just this hard charging kind of way of going about it. And what you're saying, Molly, is let's switch that thinking. Let's switch those patterns and give ourselves a moment of reflection.
I'm so glad you mentioned that because I think it's really hard when you're in it. All the people listening to your podcast have listened to a lot of podcasts about writers and what to do and read articles and followed blogs and the whole thing. When you're in the midst of getting that rejection letter, which I did, my first book took me 7 years to write. And my second book, I had a contract that I had to finish in 11 weeks. And let me tell you, my second book, when I had resistance, I didn't have the luxury of resistance because I had my publishing house waiting for the pages. But what I would say is that it's really about resistance is also connected to fear of failure. So if you go deeper in yourself, I'm going to give a little therapeutic practice. Can I do this here?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm just going to walk you through it just a minute because this is the stuff that works. Because I hear you and I said to go for a walk, paint, nature, dance, great. That stuff does help, but it's doing the deeper unconscious work that sticks, that really changes. So let's just say you open up your email and you get another rejection letter. And the moment you start reading the first 3 sentences, you know what's happening. Your body's going to go into the sympathetic nervous system. It's going to go into fight or flight. It's going to go into fear. You're going to start hearing the negative voices, the comparing mindset, the scarcity mindset. You're going to start flooding with all these things. So I created something called PAC, Presence, Awareness, and Compassion. It's an acronym, PAC. And you're going to have resistance in doing this too. But if you just say something to yourself like, what the heck? I got to try it. I've tried everything else and it doesn't work. All you do is close your eyes and you get really present with what is the emotion that's going on for you right then. Fear, guilt, shame, whatever emotion's happening. And then you become really aware of where is it in the body? My stomach's tight. My heart is clenching. I feel like I want to cry. I'm slumping over. My palms are sweating. What does it look like? Oh my gosh, it looks like black slug or a brick, or I've got a noose around my neck. I can't talk. My mouth is dry. And you just stay with it. Don't escape from the feelings. We always say you have to feel to heal. And it's going to get a little intense because your body is finally like, thank you for listening to me. Kind of like, when a little kid wants something, they pull on you like, can I have a glass of water? And if you don't listen, they get louder and louder, glass of water. Your body's going to do the same thing because it's like, finally, they're listening to me. You may see an 8-year-old. You may see yourself failing at it. You got an F in a test, or the man or woman or person didn't ask you out for the second date. You're going to see it flooding in. Just sit with it and watch it and watch it. And then all you do is bring in the C, compassion. That could be a warm blanket, a cup of tea, a mantra saying, you know what? You're going to be okay. I'm so proud of you. I love you. You're doing the best you can do. This is one email in the spectrum of your life. You're going to survive. And you let that compassion come in. You notice the body calm. You notice the heart open more. And you start to realize this is a deeper issue than I just got a rejection letter for my book proposal. This is years of going through things, but not really looking at it. So try PAC. I do it every week. Now I just pull my car over and I can do it in like 30 seconds.
So
and
presence.
I can do it really quickly.
Yeah, say it again, Molly.
P, presence, get really present with the emotions. Awareness, where's in the body? What does it look like? What is it saying? And then you bring in compassion. Compassion is the medicine, the salve for our wounds.
I love that. I hope that people are taking notes because this comes up for all of us time and time again, even though we think we've nailed it or we've moved past it. It will come up in different parts of our writing process, parts of sharing our work, parts of being out there in community. But I also am so happy you brought this up, Molly, because it reminds people they are not alone in feeling this self-doubt. They're not alone in feeling guilt or shame or unworthiness if they do get the rejection or they didn't finish the word count for the day or whatever their goal is. I just want you listeners to know you're not alone. We've all gone through this. It doesn't matter how seasoned you are. And there is a new way to look at how to care for yourself as a creative. Don't just brush it under the rug. Really sit with it, like Molly said. And I just think that that is such an effective, accessible way of doing it, Molly.
Well, I mean, now we know all the science and data. I could quote all the data that I've studied and researched and read from a mental health perspective of like the old way doesn't work. Moving on, brush it under the rug, pull up your bootstraps.
Toughen up.
Toughen up. Stop crying. We know now from all the studies that that does not change our neuropathways. Our neuropathways have plasticity. And to rewire the neuropathways, you need to tell it what it wants to hear. You need to function from a place of body somatics is real. So it's really about taking the time to, I constantly think about like if you broke your arm, you wouldn't just keep moving on. You got to get the cast, you got to go to the doctor, you need to give yourself rest to heal the bone. It's the same with our internal stories and old stories that don't serve us anymore. I'll tell one personal story. In my graduate school program, I had to write a thesis, and the whole year was writing my master's thesis. And the first, what's the word I'm trying to think of? The first writing. What's the word? First draft. Thank you.
First draft.
You'd be so. I promise you, I'm a writer. I can't even think of first draft. The first draft My thesis advisor came back with more red on the page of her correcting my mistakes than actual words. And I kid you not, I laid on my bed in San Francisco. I cried my eyes out. I'm like, I'm the worst writer. I'm not going to graduate. And, I wrote the thesis. I graduated, the whole thing. When I did my first edits for my second book, I had to deal with that PTSD.
Yeah.
It came up when I was handing in my first pages to my editor. I was like, whoa, I'm back to graduate school. So this stuff stays in the body.
Yes.
And it doesn't go away. So I finally was like, okay, I got to deal with this now, else I'll never write another book.
Yeah, that's so relatable. I remember my first real professional developmental edit, and it was 325 pages of so many comments in the margins. And man, did I go through a range of emotions.
Yeah.
It's
being a
very
writer,
relatable.
not for the faint of heart. I mean, you have to be able to handle a lot of different emotions in order to publish a book or write a book even.
Yes. Okay. So this is a good segue for me to talk about another thing I really wanted to ask you about. So we've talked about grounding yourself. We've talked about getting present when we're feeling the resistance and really acknowledging what's going on. But there's still that part where a writer very much wants to show up for their creative practice, but they fail to show up. And I really want to ask you, Molly, about the shadow side and from your perspective, how you can explain that. I very much want to be here. I very much want to write this book. I very much want to show up. And yet I don't. And yet I fail to show up. So can you kind of talk about the shadow side a little bit?
So what Nicole is talking about is I'm trained as a Jungian, Carl Jung psychotherapist, and Jung coined the phrase, the shadow side. And the premise of the shadow side is that we have a light side to ourselves and the dark side, which is the shadow. The shadow is the part we don't want to look at, our jealousy, our envy, our rage, our judgments. Yet Jung believed if you can embrace your shadow side, you are more whole. Think of yin and yang, the black and the white. If you embrace these parts of yourself and you don't shun them or shame them, so you don't shun or shame the resistance parts of yourself, you embrace it, you will be able to move through it. But what happens so often is we don't do that. So one technique you can do to embrace the shadow side is write it all down. Write down everything you've ever felt. Write down every mean thought you've had about anyone, any jealous thought, anything you've done. You stole a candy bar when you were in third grade. You cheated on a test. You didn't tell the truth of this or that. You cheated in your marriage. There's so many different things. My friend got a book contract, and the first thing I felt like was I was pissed.
Yeah.
Like, why her, not me? Why him and not me? So the part about resistance that's really important for people to know is that if we resist it, it persists. That's the same as hate. What you resist persists.
Okay.
So it's almost like imagining, embracing these dark parts of yourself. And I know it's so hard to do, so you can write it down. Just even taking a moment to look at it. I mean, I'll be a Mola right now with Nicole. Like, we just met for this coffee and we talked about everyone's thing. And on the drive home from the coffee, before we're coming on this interview, I sat with myself. I'm like, what's landed and what didn't? What did people say that made me feel better? And what did people say that didn't make me feel better? And why is that, Molly? I took responsibility for myself versus being like, oh, it's them or they said this. Like, no, what's my shadow? What's going on for me? Were you jealous? Did you not want to hear it yet? Were you not ready to receive that? So I'm really an advocate because I know it works. For you, the listener, to know that you're not a bad person and you're not unique and that you have this shadow side. Everyone has it. And you don't have to live in it. Like, you write it down, burn it, and then go on with your day. But notice when you burn it and you're watching it, it's like the phoenix rising. You're like, I feel a little bit lighter. I actually feel like I could use something I just did in my story, fiction or nonfiction. Nonfiction is like, I'll write this exact story. Fiction would be like, oh yeah, this character needed to release the shame from having an affair. And he or she did it this way. So that's what I would say. It's just those parts of ourselves we don't want to look at. But if you don't look at them, they're ever present and that much more directive of your own mental health and your own creative process.
Yeah, I'm so happy that you really dove into that, Molly, because for a lot of us, we've heard a little bit about the shadow side, but it's really applicable to so many writers, myself included. Pretty much every writer I know, it's one time or another, you shared the same thing, is we get into the comparison trap. We think certain things. If a friend in our critique group got this major book contract and we didn't, or if someone's doing really well on social media or got asked to speak somewhere, we all have that. And how amazing would it be for each of us when we're experiencing that or right after to write it down, to burn it, to release it, to tell ourselves we're not alone in this, to tell ourselves it's okay to acknowledge it, but then release it out into the world and we no longer hold on to it. So yeah, I was definitely nodding along when you were explaining all of that.
Yeah, I think what happens is we want this magic pill. We as humans want to know how we feel when we feel in the light. We feel good. We have joy. We have love because we know it feels so good. And we don't want to feel all the other stuff. As we all know in all the research is like, in order to have the light, you have to have the dark. When you ask anyone, writers included, what's been one of your most memorable stories of being a writer? I mean, I've heard many writers speak on stage. They often share about failure and they often share about the fuck up, where they messed up, where they made a mistake, where they didn't get the book contract, where they didn't take the time. It took them 2 years to write a book. But I also will say, I push my clients, I put a hand on their back and I push them gently, but I am going to push them. So I'm going to push your listeners right now. You also need to have these moments where you do say, okay, I burned it. I've seen it. I own it. And I need to get to the computer and I need to read my 1,500 words.
Yeah.
Everyone's always like, when they ask me about being a writer, I'm like, I sat my butt in a chair. I had a full client base. I had a 7 and a 10-year-old. My publishing place gave me 11 weeks to write a book. And I had to write 1,500 words a day. That's it. So I got to the library. I sat in the chair and I wrote 1,500 words a day. And then I went on with my day. And I don't say that to have people make me feel sorry for myself. It really was actually the power of the boundaries and having accountability that got me to fight my resistance as well. So you can do all the mental health things, all the spiritual techniques. But then the reality of it is, as humans, in order if we want something to happen, we got to do it to make it happen.
You got to put in the work. You got to put in the work. And a funny little side note, Molly, that just brought up the imagery of you and I going to write our books in the community college library, totally anonymous, sitting in little cubicles, no Wi-Fi, and every day, but in the chair. I so remember that.
It was so funny. And when I wrote my last word, I got up from the cubicle. I'm like, oh my gosh. I look out the window. And for some reason, of all the seats in the library, I chose right by the garbage dump.
With the dumpster.
The dumpster, like the huge dumpster. I'm like, how did I? But maybe that could be a metaphor of like, I was dumping all my trash that doesn't serve me anymore because I wrote a book on intuition and I got to trust my intuition and,
I love that. Well, I don't want to linger forever on all of the darkness that comes with not looking at our shit, so to speak. But I do think it's really important for people to not compartmentalize all this, especially when you're in the creative process. But let's bring it around, Molly, full circle, talk about some really sort of light, positive, easy first steps that someone can do when they're exploring what's holding them back, and also just to reclaim the joy of the creative process.
Someone said to me, follow the energy. So the first step I would say is get out a pen and paper, write on the top, what brings me energy? What makes me feel alive? Or who? Or where? And make a list of the people, the places, the situations that make you feel alive. What brings you joy? Like, I love conferences. I love them. I'm inspired, whether it's for my podcast or a writer's conference or a mental health conference or speaker. I'm alive. I can't do 20 of them a year, but 2 or 3 a year, you're alive. A certain group of women, like our group of women that we meet with, we like are running into that coffee shop at 7 a.m. to collaborate and to be vulnerable. That brings me alive. what books you read, what TV shows you watch, what food you're eating, what you're drinking, how you're treating your body, how you feel on days where you get out of bed and go for a run or a walk, and how you feel on days when you get out of bed, eat a cinnamon roll and a cup of coffee, which I'm telling you I've done, so no shame there. But yet you got to write 1,000 pages. So just really follow the flow. And that stems from worthiness, that you are worthy, you deserve to feel the energy. So follow the energy to be alive. And then everyone else wants to be alive with you. And I also think there's this process of trust. Can you really trust you're guided by something bigger than yourself? I'm going to get a little woo-woo here. But especially as writers, we have to tap into something outside of our own brain, our own minds, to have these creative processes. What is that for you? Create an altar of sorts. Have your pictures, your relics, your guides. Have that be in your writing space, your candles, your crystals, your rocks, your memorabilia, whatever it is. If you're writing a book on music and you want to have an old LP, you want to have an image of Bob Dylan or Joni Mitchell or whatever. It's just creating this space that allows you to feel a high vibration. The places, the people, the environments, we are a vibration. We are energy. You feel it when you get chills down your spine. You feel it when you have your face in the sun. You feel it when you hug your children or your loved ones. That is vibration. That is what you want to feel as much as you can while you're writing or you're doing your creative endeavor, is follow the energy.
That's beautiful, Molly. And following the energy is a beautiful writing prompt to get your creative muscles warm. It's also a beautiful exercise in building sanctuary for where you are going to write. I always talk about building that sanctuary, that safe space, that quiet space where people aren't trampling through, where you can actually write the pages you want to write. So very accessible. I love that you shared that, Molly.
Well, I mean, I think about this a lot. When I was writing, I could only write, and I honored this part of myself. My best writing, I should say, was from 5 to 7 a.m. And I found a Starbucks that opened at 5 a.m. and I couldn't write in my house. And while I was driving to the Starbucks, I tapped into the muse. I said my intentions. I quieted my mind. And then I'd get to the Starbucks and I'd write for 2 hours and then go home and start my day. At that point, when I had young kids. And so now it's a little bit different. Now I'm not currently writing a book, but journaling is so important to me. I carry a little notebook around everywhere in my purse for ideas. I'm sure you've had this voice recording. I voice record stuff, ideas, especially intuition.
Yeah.
Are we going to intuition?
Yes.
So everyone has a deep connection to their inner voice, their gut, their intuition. Everyone has it. But it's like going back to the nervous system of sympathetic and parasympathetic. You got to turn on like a light switch. You've got to feed it. You've got to trust it. You got to follow it. Like a muscle lifting a weight, it will get stronger. And the best way to follow your intuition is when you hear it, you do something about it. So that would be my brain. It's like 5 a.m. I'd be like, oh, I have to go buy another cup of coffee. I have to put on my clothes to drive to Starbucks. But it was like, you go to Starbucks. That's the place. I'm giving good ads for Starbucks. You should get some money from me, Nicole, as a fellow podcaster. But really, what is that for you? What is the voice? What does it sound like? Is it female? Is it male? Is it non-gender? Is it old? Is it young? Is it angelic? What does it sound like? But just know that living this way, you find more joy. It's more exciting. It's more interesting too. It's more interesting to live from this place.
It really is. And that tapping into your intuition, which is hard at first, but it is a muscle you can keep tapping into and strengthening, is not just about resistance and showing up, but it goes into so much more. I always tell writers, if you have a little internal red flag that's flickering, or your intuition is saying, oh, I didn't fix this, but maybe the readers won't notice, they'll notice. If you have an intuition that you're writing a story with a message that is not aligned with you or your true writer voice, you think maybe it'll sell because that's what's selling right now. No one else will notice. You'll notice. Other people will notice. You've got to follow that intuition all the way from when the muse hits, to creating the story, to editing the story, to marketing the story, to talking to your audience, follow your intuition, because I'm telling you from experience, and Molly, you can probably say the same thing, is I've had times when I ignored my intuition and man, did it come back to bite me.
And the beginning of the intuition is intense.
Yeah.
So it's not like it feels all like roses and, chocolate. It's not. It's like, oh, I got to rewrite this page.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I got to tell this agent they're not the right person for me. I've been working forever for an agent, but yet I don't feel like they really get me as a writer.
Right.
Those are tough decisions.
Yeah.
But exactly how you said, they will catch up with you and it will affect the end product of a book. So it's like really following that voice. It's really powerful. I mean, I've had some of the most crazy experiences of my life, as you know, like going to India and by following my intuition.
Yes. Yeah, that was amazing. Your intuition told you to just jump on a plane and go meet the Dalai Lama, and man, did you do it.
Yeah. So I was writing my book. I published my first book, Cracking Open, and I was in the process of thinking about my next book. And I was watching a documentary called 10 Questions to Ask the Dalai Lama. And it was about an American journalist who had an opportunity to get a private audience with His Holiness, but only had time for 10 questions. And what would he ask? And the documentary also went into the Chinese regime on the Tibetan people. And in the middle of the movie, my whole body began to shake. And all I kept hearing my intuition was saying is that you need to go to India and help Tibetan refugees. And I mean, I had done yoga, I liked meditation, but Tibet was not one of my causes. I had no interest in going to India. I'm not a Buddhist. I mean, who doesn't love the Dalai Lama? But it wasn't that. But I booked my ticket and I was going to go. I planned the volunteer place and my whole journey. I was going alone. And sadly, my father passed away. And I could barely get out of bed, let alone get on a plane and go to India. So I canceled my trip. And I was on a hike with a friend one day about a year later. And she said, when are you going? You raised money. You had the whole plan. And I kind of got mad. I was like, it's not that easy to pick up and go to India. I had kids. I had a full private practice. But I got home and I kept hearing her words. That's another thing to remember, writers. If you keep hearing someone's words. And I was like, she's right. And she kept saying, if you wanted to go to India, you could go tomorrow. And I booked a ticket and left 3 weeks later to go to India. And I remember the first time I went, I was like, if this journalist got a private audience, I could get one. And I just wrote www.dalailama.com and asked for a private audience. And they're like, no, he's 70 at the time. He had hundreds of thousands of requests. Sorry, no. And then 2 days before I was leaving, I thought, I'm going to write them again. That's another thing with writing. Keep writing the voices you hear. So I wrote him again and said, my father passed away. I was unable to come, but I'm coming now. Is there any way I could get a private audience with His Holiness, the Dalai Lama? And they said, we'll see what we can do. And when I got there, I got my private audience. I got to spend some time with him alone. And that was following my intuition. It was not logic. It was not the mind. It was not my specific to-do list. It was my heart. It was my heart. And one last thing I'll say is that most people ask me what the one thing you learned in spending time with His Holiness. And this is a beautiful way to come to conclusion with all you writers. The one thing I kept hearing over and over again is we are all connected.
Right.
Like we are all connected. Your actions not only affect you, but affect other people. What you write and how you put your beauty out in the world could change someone's life. Or just could give them a great beach read, or could make them laugh or cry. So do not hold back. Do not hold back. We need you in the world. We need everyone that's listening to this podcast and that are writers. We need your muse. So yeah, that's my story of intuition.
I'm so happy that you shared that, Molly. And yes, writing is connecting. We write to connect. And speaking of writing, speaking of sharing books, this is a perfect opportunity for you to share with the audience both of the titles of your books and tell them which one that you wrote more about visiting with the Dalai Lama. So Molly, tell us your books.
My first book is called Cracking Open. And that's the same of my coaching program, my podcast. And it's an artistic journal for self-discovery. It's a journal. And I self-published. So that was the whole thing. I wrote it, I painted it, I did everything on my own. That was a beautiful journey. And then my second book is called Trust Within. and I was published by Amazon. And that was a whole journey. So, and my book about the Dalai Lama is In Trust Within. It's about following your intuition.
I love it, Molly. Now tell everyone where they can find you, because I know I would encourage everyone, if you resonate with what Molly says, I can tell you, run, don't walk to sign up to work with her, listen to her podcast. So Molly, share all the things of how people can find you.
Molly-Carroll.com is my website. Molly Carroll Inc. is my Instagram. And my podcast is called Cracking Open with Molly Carroll. And it's all revolved around kind of my whole quote with Cracking Open is the Leonard Cohen lyric, when there are cracks, the light gets in. And so I totally believe in cracking open. It makes you more interesting. It makes you healthier, better relationships to your kids, your loved ones, and then you find the light. So I ask everyone, what was your cracking open moment and how did it change you forever? I interview artists and athletes and teachers and therapists and actors and designers. I just follow my intuition. And so, yeah, it's a beautiful place to land. And I've been so fortunate and so lucky to have this work and have Nicole as a friend.
Well, Molly, you know I love you. And listeners, I really encourage you. Her podcast is incredible. Her coaching program is just as incredible. And Molly, thank you so much for spending this time on The Whole Writer. I have loved it, and I'm sure that listeners are going to be very eager to connect with you.
Well, thank you, Nicole. I'm so happy for you and how lucky everyone is to have you in their life, too. So grateful to be on The Whole Writer.
Okay, everyone. Thanks for tuning in today, and we'll see you next time on The Whole Writer. If you want to check out my coaching programs for fiction writers, visit NicoleMeier.com. That's MEIER. And if you like this episode, I'd love you to take a minute to leave a rating and review for this podcast. This will help more writers like you to discover the show and to get going on their writing journey. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, happy writing, everyone.